when you melt an ice sheet, sea level actually drops nearby the ice sheet. And the problem is, if you live a long way from the ice sheet, say in the Pacific Islands, you get higher than average rise. So if you live in somewhere like Tuvalu, you get 25% more rise than the global average because of these processes. My name's Mark Hoggard. I'm an observational geodynamicist at the Australian National University. So geodynamics is how the planet works, and observational means that I do a lot of work that's based on using data and measurements to inform our models of how the Earth works. One example is sea level rise. It's a fact, it is happening. We can measure it and we can see things are rising. And we also have lots of data that tells us ice sheets are melting. So we know that overall there's a vast amount of water that's currently locked up on land that is being melted and added into the oceans. The challenge in sea level modeling is that the water doesn't just rise like it would in the bathtub. It doesn't just go up by the same amount everywhere. And that's because there are these two additional processes we have to worry about. The first is the ice sheets are so massive, they have their own gravity field. And what that means is as they melt, gravity drops nearby, and so the water level drops nearby. And the second thing is because they're so heavy, they squash the inside of the Earth. Even though it's solid, you can compress it like the springs in a mattress or something. You squash it down. When you melt that ice, it springs back up. All of that means that when you melt an ice sheet, sea level actually drops nearby the ice sheet. So as this simulation evolves, actually the rotation axis of the Earth changes, and also the amount of flattening of the Earth changes, because we're predominantly moving mass from near the poles into the oceans, which on average are closer to the equator. So the current IPCC AR6 report is forecasting there'll be about 80 centimetres of rise by the end of the century.
So I'm adding some sea level physics into our model. So
if you live in, some of the Pacific Island nations, for example, they are very low-lying land masses. If you live in Kiribati, for example, you know that you're going to end up losing your land and you're going to need an alternative place to live. Now, there are always uncertainties in our projections, but if we can reduce them and give those people making those planning kind of statements a little bit more certainty over what the scenario they're working with, it allows them to be much more effective in kind of mitigating their adaptation strategies and so on. When I was in the US and I was starting to work on sea level modeling, one of the things you have to do is make a map of what you think the inside of the Earth looks like. So where we sit in Canberra, we're on the tectonic plate that's roughly kind of 80 to 100 kilometres thick. Whereas if you go out further west in Australia, there, the tectonic plate is 250 kilometres thick. But turns out these maps have another benefit. There are these very large mineral deposits in northern Australia called sediment-hosted base metal deposits that contain very large quantities of lead, zinc, copper. These are all metals that are critical to the green energy transition. These deposits occur in sedimentary basins, and what we realized is they're lining up with changes in the thickness of the tectonic plate. So our maps had new value to say, well, in this area, the most prospective place to look is probably over there. So yeah, it kind of produced this treasure map. These maps are global, but in Australia, the maps we produced have led to so far 97 new exploration tenements being picked up by mining companies. So it's kind of renewed exploration in certain areas. Look at the sulfides in this one.
Yeah.
I'm very honoured to receive the medal. I work with lots of very gifted people. So I'm really kind of viewing it as an acknowledgement of the wider group of people that I work with, the amazing science we've been doing, the fact that it's had various impacts that are meaningful for society.